Welcome to the Blue Security Podcast, a weekly podcast for information security defenders, where we bring you discussions on best practices, tools, and implementation for enterprise security. Now, here are your hosts for today's show, Andy Jha and Adam Brewer.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Blue Security Podcast. I'm Andy, your host.
I'm Adam, your co-host.
All right, we have three topics that we wanted to talk about today. We're going to talk about the copy fail bug that was found in Linux. And then we're also going to talk about Claude security, which is now in public beta. And then finally, at the end of the show, we're going to talk about how Microsoft is using AI in how they defend the company. And so since we are going to talk about Microsoft, let's just get that disclaimer right out of the way.
Let's do it. Andy and I both work for Microsoft in our field security sales. However, we record the show outside of work on our own time. As I speak, we are recording this at 9:20 a.m. on a Saturday morning. So the show is a labor of love, not a work product of Microsoft. So with that said, the opinions you're about to hear expressed are those of Adam Brewer and Andy Jha, and do not necessarily reflect those of Microsoft Corporation. And with that, on with the show.
All right, so there was this nearly decade-old Linux bug, 732 bytes of Python, and every major distribution is going to be vulnerable to this, called copy fail. So that dropped this week. And the big thing is that AI was the one that found it. So what is copy fail? It is a local privileged escalation vulnerability. So meaning any unprivileged local user can escalate to root without needing network access or special kernel features. And it affects every Linux distribution that has shipped since 2017. And unlike most local privilege escalations, it requires no race window and no kernel-specific offsets. It's a straight-line logic flaw that works the same way every single time. And the exploit itself is just 732 bytes of Python using only standard library modules and the same unmodified script, which was demonstrated in rooting Ubuntu, Amazon Linux, RHEL, and SUSE in a single take. So the technical breakdowns, if you're a Linux person, I know like basic Linux, so some of this stuff is probably not like
It's a little in the weeds, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you are a Linux person and you understand this, that's great. So the bug lives in authcens, which is auth ENCESN, a component of the Linux kernel crypto subsystem. And it gets chained through the AF_ALG, which is the kernel user space crypto API, and splice to achieve a 4-byte write into the page cache. The 4-byte write is enough to corrupt the suit ID binary, which is the SU in memory, not on disk. So it won't survive a reboot, but it does hand you a real root shell in the meantime. And so the AF_ALG ships enabled in essentially every mainstream distro's default configuration, which is why the entire window from 2017 to patch is in scope out of the box. So who's at risk? Really, any multi-tenant Linux hosts that share like a shared dev box or jump host or build servers are all at risk. Any user on those systems can become root. Kubernetes clusters are particularly dangerous because the page cache is shared across the host, meaning a compromised pod can then cross tenant boundaries and take over the entire node.
That's bad.
Yeah. That's bad. CI runners, GitHub Actions, self-host runners, GitLab runners, Jenkins agents are also high risk because they execute untrusted PR code as regular users on a shared kernel, meaning a malicious pull request could become root on the runner. So, one of the things that was interesting as I read through this was that it was discovered by an AI scanner. So copy fail was discovered by Zint code, that's spelled XINT, and it's an AI-powered vulnerability scanner after about an hour of scan time, and it pointed at a Linux crypto subsystem with no custom harness and just one operator prompt. This is a significant discovery because traditional security would have required, like a skilled human researcher spending days or weeks manually auditing kernel code to find a bug like this. And the same scan also surfaced other high severity bugs that are still in coordinated disclosure. So this is just the first one out the door, but there's more to come. And so, we've been talking about AI in the last couple of shows, and this is just another example that really shows that vulnerability scanning, especially AI powered one, is no longer theoretical. It's finding production, exploitable, decades old bugs in critical infrastructure. So no real discovery here. The primary fix is really just patching. So look for a mainline commit, which will revert the 2017 optimization that was introduced with this flaw. And if you can't patch immediately, you can disable the ALGIF underscore AMID module as a stopgap for most systems. This won't break anything that's measurable because there are very few applications that actually call the AF underscore ALG directly. So for untrusted workloads like containers and CI runners, you can also block the AF underscore ALG socket creation via seccomp, and that's recommended regardless of the patch status as well. Really interesting stuff. If you're a Linux nerd, this probably all makes sense to you. To me, I'm just like, okay, this is really bad. I got to look at all my Linux distros and look for a patch and get that done as soon as possible.
We talked about AI vulnerability scanning and AI finding new vulnerabilities. And one of the specific things we pointed out is that AI is far better at finding chained vulnerabilities than humans are because it's so iterative. Humans lack, I mean, we need to sleep, we need to eat, we need to do other things, we need to stay interested. Very systematically testing different chaining combinations for weaknesses is such a strength of machines. And so this is a chained vulnerability, to be clear. You kind of walked through it when we first started talking about it, Andy. So it's a great example of that risk. And so ultimately, I think the reaction here just needs to be measured. And this is where we just say, okay, this is no longer a flying car. This is a real thing. And thankfully, the way we handle this is the same way we handle anything else that's been disclosed through coordinated responsible vulnerability. We patch in a timely fashion. We don't scream the sky is falling. We patch, we move forward, and we await the next one. And apparently more are coming. And ultimately, if the rate of change becomes unsustainable, we will develop alternatives at that time. The one thing is necessity is the mother of all invention. And so for right now, we patch our Linux based systems and we move forward. And this is why we're being conscientious about this and about the deployment and disbursement of new models like Mythos that will find these and giving the Linux Foundation and other very major critical technology providers the opportunity to get out in front of this. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about what Microsoft's doing in this space as well later on. Our employer, who I think brings an interesting perspective to the table, as I think it's pretty fair to say Microsoft has issued more security patches than any other security vendor in the world, and has gotten it down to a very sustainable, predictable cadence, and patching 1.6 billion Windows endpoints around the world every single month on the second Tuesday of the month without really any notable disruption or impact or anything else is pretty impressive. So, the Apple does a great job patching billions of iOS, macOS derivative devices as well. And obviously Google does a great job. They weren't at first. I was highly critical of them, but now patching billions of Android endpoints around the world. So it's something we've gotten a lot better at and do a lot better at scale. So, fingers crossed that all that muscle we have built for many, many years just carries forward and we just kind of keep doing the same thing. And, if we have 0 days, we'll address those. Otherwise, if they're kind of routine, coordinated, responsible disclosure, we'll patch them on our predictable cadence and we'll move on. So interesting, but kind of not interesting at the same time, right? So interesting in terms of it's novel and new and different, but uninteresting in terms of our response. It is the same way we would respond to any other vulnerability discovered any other way. And onward and upward. So let's keep going.
So cloud security is now in public beta. And so Anthropic just shipped a dedicated security product, and it is different than what we had, talked about a few weeks ago, which was Mythos, which was that kind of frontier model that they're not releasing to the general public. But this one is. And so Claude Security is a code vulnerability scanner that's powered by Claude Opus 4.7, which is kind of like their most powerful language that's out in production today. It's available directly through Claude AI sidebar or at claude.ai/security. It doesn't require any API integrations or custom agent build. It's in public beta for Claude Enterprise customers with access for Team and Max customers coming soon. It was previously known as Claude Code Security and already has been tested by hundreds of organizations during a limited research preview. And so all of their feedback kind of shaped this specific release. Pretty simple to use. All you need to do is select a repository, scope it down to a specific directory or branch, and then you can kick off a scan. Rather than matching known vulnerability patterns, Claude reasons over the code like a security researcher would, and it understands how components interact across files, modules, tracing data flows, and reading the source to build up a picture of what could go wrong. Each finding comes with a confidence rating, a severity assessment, likely impact, reproduction steps, and generated patch that you can openly directly in Claude Code to work through a fix in the context. You can also schedule scans on a regular cadence and scope it to a specific directory within a repo. You can dismiss findings with documented reasons so future reviewers know that prior triage was intentional, and you can export findings as CSVs or markdowns for existing tracking systems. There are also webhooks that you can pipe a scan directly into Slack, Jira, or other tools that your security team already lives in. So that closes the gap between your finding the discovery and then having that engineer aware of it. So, like I said in the beginning here, it is a separate kind of tool than the Claude Mythos preview, which is a more powerful model that is supposed to surpass like the most elite human experts. That one right now is only being released to some vetted partners through that Project Glasswing that we talked about. Whereas Cloud Security here is broadly available. It's an enterprise grade product. It puts Opus 0.7's capability to work across your code base for practical vulnerability scanning, patch generation without requiring any kind of controlled access that Mythos normally has. In the partner ecosystem, CrowdStrike, Microsoft Security, Palo Alto Networks, SentinelOne, Trend AI, Wiz, they're all embedding Opus 4.7 into their existing security tools. So organizations can access these capabilities through the platforms they already run. And then on the services side, like Accenture, Deloitte, PwC, they're all helping enterprises deploy Cloud integrated security solutions for vulnerability management, secure code review, and incident response. I think this is great. If you're already using Claude Code, I think this integrates seamlessly into that workflow. I'm really curious though how this will compete with other code scanning like tools that have been traditionally, if you have an AppSec program and you're already using code scanning, like something like I used a product like Veracode in the past. There's GitHub Advanced Security, and how those are going to be integrated into maybe either use this or how this is going to compete with stuff like that. So um, I think this is anything that increases the security of code, I think is good. I'm just curious how this will shake out in the security kind of solutions industry because it is something that you have to pay for with Cloud Enterprise.
Yeah, and Opus 4.7 is a general purpose, deep thinking, reasoning model. So it's used for all those scenarios. In fact, in our world, in the Microsoft 365 Copilot Researcher Agent, Opus 4.7 is now available as a model you can use for doing research.
Funny enough, you mentioned that. I used it recently this week, and what it did was it used ChatGPT, the ChatGPT model, to first generate an output, and then it used Opus to then refine it. So it used multiple models within the researcher agent, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, that a feature recently shipped. It's like effectively peer review, where it runs it with the GPT model 5.5 now, and then it will review it with the Anthropic model. Or you can also do what's called Model Council, which sounds like tribal council to me, but it'll actually it'll run the query across both like an Anthropic and a OpenAI model at the same time, and then give you like dual outputs side by side, and you can compare like how they both did. So if you want to do that, it's a really clean way to get multiple outputs and see which one you like better and which one's better tailored to what you were aiming for. So that's neither here nor there, but just an interesting side note that I want to point out. Opus 4.7 is a general purpose, deep thinking, reasoning model, and it's being used in this scenario to analyze code. And Mythos, as we're also comparing it to, will never ship. They have said that Mythos is not a product that's designed to move to production. It's designed to be a research preview to help inform production releases. And apparently, Opus 4.7 is pretty close already to Mythos's capability set. And expect that I would expect more iterative updates to Opus, and eventually they'll say, yeah, we are now at Mythos level capability. Is kind of how this will proceed. That's just me reading the tea leaves, but that's my prediction. This is specifically code scanning, not necessarily, hey, I'm going to point you at a system where I don't have access to the code and I want you to reason through how you would attack this or anything else. Obviously, code scanning is highly important right now, and that's a lot of reason why organizations got access to Mythos, especially companies that are not open source, like our employer. Run it against the Windows code base, see what you come up with, and then we can start proactively fixing stuff. Not to say I know or can confirm or deny that's been done. I'm not read into that, but I assume something like that is happening. Anyhow, so this is cool, and we'll continue to see this develop. And this is why I think I said either last week or the week before, I continue to be bullish that in the long run, this AI will actually be a great equalizer for the good guys, for the blue hats of the world, for our Blue Security Podcast listeners, because it gives us basically that equalizing capability through effectively money. Our security teams are reasonably well funded, and gives us the chance to kind of get out in front of these, even if we may not have headcount or long-term advantage from a human capital perspective. We can gain an advantage that's consistent and persistent and durable through the use of these tools in the long run. And I think it will actually be difficult, and I'm optimistic for the bad guys to keep up here. But in the short term, yes, there's going to be pain as we first transition into this world and we have a flurry of new vulnerabilities announced all at once. Yeah, it may be difficult for the next couple of years, but then we will reach a steady state where all major code bases have been reviewed, the quote unquote low hanging fruit has been found and has been patched. And at that point, moving forward, if we're running these types of vulnerability scanners against new code before it ever ships, we are shipping defect-free, security-free code from the get-go. And then there's just less opportunity or less need to go back and patch it later. So again, short-term pain here. The sky is not falling, although things might suck for a little bit. But in the long run, the goal is that code just leaves the door, and it's secure by design and secure by default. And there's a lot less we have to do as defenders to run around and patch stuff after the fact. And that will be a great day. It's not to say we'll never do it again, but I bet it'll become less frequent, because I think a lot more code is going to ship in a lot better state with a lot more security review from before it ever ships. So that's why tools like this, I'm very optimistic about in the long run, even if there is some short-term pain.
Yeah, I did see something or I had a colleague mention earlier this week that essentially all the information that has been generated has already been reasoned over with the current AI models. Like there's nothing that has been generated, like all the information of the internet has already been, sucked into these models and reasoned over. So we're at a point where, it's only new information or it's reasoning over like existing information and on itself. So I think like you're saying, at some point, all of these discoveries will eventually be less frequent. We're going to have everything patched up, and then only new stuff will exist.
Yeah, you get to a steady state here. We are in a inflection point right now where there is a rapid rate of change. And sure, publicly facing information on the internet has all been ingested and incorporated into models. Private code bases, especially massive private code bases, may not have been fully reasoned over yet.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe partially, maybe in wide swaths. but not all of it. And then as models continue to evolve the state of the art and they get better at reasoning and thinking and discovering vulnerabilities, even though they've seen the code base before, they can take a fresh look at it, a fresh swag at it, and do a better job discovering. So I think we're saying the same thing, that the steady state is coming, but we are not in the steady state right now. We are getting there. We are climbing the difficult side of the mountain right now, but we will reach that summit. We will level off at some point. But right now is we are in the hard times right now before we get to the summit, and we're coming down the other side of the mountain, and it gets a lot easier. But this is the hard part right now. So don't lose faith, don't lose hope. I get it. This is going to be, there's going to be a lot of patching. There just is. There's going to be a lot of 0 days. There's going to be a lot of high level, high severity vulnerabilities that we have to address very rapidly. A lot of fire drills. Let's just prepare for it. Let's get really crisp on how we patch. And we should already be, although we're always getting better. We have that growth mindset, the continuous improvement mindset, and we'll continue to get better at it. But I do think it is not hard to imagine a day 3 years from now, Andy, before the turn of the decade, where we patch a lot less frequently, and patching is a lot less of security strategy. I do think that day comes, and it shifts back to probably picking off some of these last like human-based changes that organizations have been hesitant to bite off. Things like getting back to phish-resistant MFA and getting that fully deployed. And those are challenges we haven't bit off because they're not really technology challenges. The technology is solved. It's a human challenge. And so when do you have management buy-in? When do you have employee-based buy-in to make those changes and implement them? We may have to shift our focus temporarily as we deal with a lot of these discovered vulnerabilities. And then when we're doing less patching, then we'll have more time theoretically to focus on, again, those human impacting changes that we still need to make and still need to get done. I am not, by the way, I am not encouraging you to delay your phish-resistant MFA deployment for 3 more years. You should go do it tomorrow. But if you don't have management buy-in, if you don't have the headcount, if you don't have the bandwidth, I get it. But I just want to be clear, I'm not advocating for that. But I get it. Some orgs, they're going to be so heads down with some of these patching exercises right now. Some of this work may get delayed that they've been meaning to do.
All right. Our final topic, I wanted to talk about Microsoft's AI security strategy because we published a full roadmap, and it's a multi-layered security strategy and not really like a specific product announcement or anything like that. We'll put the
There
link.
was a little product announcement sprinkled in there, like a little tease. But yes, overall, this was much more. This was on the SRC blog, so the Microsoft Security
Research Center.
Research Center. Thank you. Yes. So, I mean, explicitly not a product group, not a revenue generating part of the company, a team who has a relatively altruistic purpose of protect our world, protect Microsoft, protect our world, protect our customers. That is their focus. So this is very explicitly not designed to make money or generate revenue. It's designed to keep people safe and articulate how we're going to do that.
Yeah. And so like at the front of the blog, I should say, they talk about how recent AI advances now mean that models can autonomously discover weaknesses. They can chain multiple lower severity issues into working end-to-end exploits, things that we've talked about on our show before. And now AI is significantly compressing that window from vulnerability discovery to exploitation. So Microsoft's argument is that these same capabilities that are giving attackers an edge can also create a genuine opportunity for defenders. It's almost like we are talking about the blog in the previous few minutes of this show. Like Adam, you were making the same point, right? And so
Hive mind is well at work.
Over the past 2 years, Microsoft has had this Secure Future initiative, and through that, they've been strengthening their security foundations through AI to accelerate vulnerability discovery and remediation. And now there's even more. So in this, they published the 3 pillars of the strategy. One is AI-led vulnerability discovery. So Microsoft plans to incorporate advanced AI models like Claude Mythos Preview through Project Glasswing directly into their security development lifecycle to identify vulnerabilities and develop mitigations early in the process that were previously possible. AI-assisted discoveries will flow through existing MSRC processes, including Patch Tuesday, so the distribution mechanism stays predictable, even though the discovery model becomes more powerful.
I totally said that earlier in the thing, and I did not mean to, but that was exactly my point, is even though there may be more discoveries, the way we deal with them remains the same, and it's consistent and predictable, and it's that second Tuesday of the month. You're gonna get your Windows updates, and that should be reassuring to everyone that unless it rises to that need of this is gonna be an out of band patch, it's gonna be through that same process. So if you're really good, you're using your Windows Auto Patch, you're using Windows Hot Patch, you're all set to deploy patches at scale through deployment rings, and you're not individually approving every patch, which, my God, why are you still doing that? You're in really good shape now. If you still have some bumps and every patch Tuesday's painful, maybe now's a good time to try to streamline that process.
And this is something that we also talked about. So in this blog, Microsoft says that they're going to use AI to proactively scan open source code bases, which will identify issues handled through coordinated vulnerability disclosure.
You made that point, Andy.
Yeah. And so like I said, because we have access to this stuff and Microsoft is also using open source code, obviously they're going to scan the code that they're using and then, try to coordinate and get those fixed because they're using it in the code base. So
Yep. And I think you'll see the Apples and Googles of the world doing the same, where
Yep.
any libraries they're importing into their code. Obviously, Mac OS and iOS are both Unix derivative systems. They're importing a lot of open source modules, and Android's built on Linux. So they also have a vested interest in making sure that all those downstream components are being scanned, not just their closed source code as well.
And then the second pillar is AI ready posture management. So Microsoft has identified 5 dimensions where AI driven attacks gain disproportionate advantages: patching, open source software, customer source code, internet facing assets, and baseline security hygiene. So there's a new Secure Now blade, and this is what you're talking about, Adam, in the Microsoft Security Exposure Management, which is available today at security.microsoft.com/secure now, which gives customers guidance and tooling to access their current state, prioritize actions, and models the quote unquote what if scenarios, and then applies automation to remediate at scale. The tool set will span attack surface discoveries via Defender external attack surface management, code scanning via GitHub's advanced security with Copilot Autofix, and Microsoft baseline security models for applying foundational controls across the M365 services with impact simulation before enforcement. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the Secure Now blade in security exposure management is not for sale. We don't sell that. It's included with any level of usage of Microsoft security products. So that's why I was making the point. This is not a new revenue generating announcement or anything like that. This is baked into existing features. You cannot buy Microsoft Security Exposure Management. We don't sell it. It's just included with anything you're using in the Defender portal. So you can go over there, and the more tools you have onboarded, the more valuable this gets for sure. If you're using things like external attack surface management, you get more visibility than if you're not. But none of those are requirements to take advantage of this Secure Now blade and to go check it out. So security.microsoft.com/secure now.
And then finally, the third pillar is AI powered solutions at enterprise scale. And so Microsoft plans to produce an internally developed multi-model AI driven scanning harness, and it will make it available to customers with preview expected in June 2026, which is like a month
Next
away.
month. Yeah. So an internally developed multi-model AI-driven scanning harness, and it's going to be productized and made available to customers. So that's sometimes that's where stuff comes from. At Microsoft, a lot of times is we will scratch our own itch, obviously being a company of software developers, make something to help ourselves, and then say, customers would like this too. We should turn this into a product and go sell it to them. Microsoft Sentinel, as an example, was originally developed in the Xbox organization and then was turned into a full-on product that now is used by hundreds of thousands of customers around the world. So this is another example. And harnesses are always, I think, the current state of the art, where the most interesting development is happening, as a lot of these models have reached relative parity with one another, and they're all pretty gosh darn good and amazing. Tomato GPT 5.5 or Opus 4.7 or whatever. The harness is where the innovation is, because this is the part that actually spawns like all the agents that are issuing multiple prompts. So you issue a prompt into a harness, and it's like, I need 10 agents spun up. Each of these agents is going to run these prompts in these chains and these orders to go accomplish a given task. And so you think you've issued one prompt, but under the covers, potentially hundreds, if not thousands of prompts will be issued. That's why these models like Copilot Cowork, Claude Cowork, OpenClaw, they're harnesses, and they generate an exponential increase in token consumption compared to just issuing like traditional prompt and response models like a chat GPT type experience. And so that's the thing to keep in mind, is this is potentially really, really powerful, really, really interesting, being a harness that's going to leverage multiple models. Also, to your point, Andy, what if this says, hey, Opus 4.7 and GPT 5.5, both of you go bang on this and tell me what you come back with, and then compare notes with each other? Incredibly powerful, and something you can really only get from a Microsoft, as opposed to OpenAI or Anthropic's not going to offer that because they're going to be just focused on just their models. So I think that's also interesting when you can go to that multi-model, multi-vendor approach within a single tool from a single vendor, is kind of uniquely differentiated. So I look forward to hearing more about that. And gosh, next month already,
Mhm.
exciting times for security researchers.
Yeah, and in the article, it says that the goal is to pair model output with context and prioritization so that large volumes of findings don't just overwhelm development teams. The solution's designed to deliver actionable outcomes and not just raw results. And then rapidly deployed defender detections for AI discovered vulnerabilities will also ship alongside the corresponding security updates. So protection and disclosure will happen together. And then they did talk about, because I think this was released right around the same time that Cloud Mythos was
It
announced
was.
as well. So Microsoft says that through Project Glasswing, they're working closely with Anthropic to test Claude Mythos preview and then identify and mitigate vulnerabilities early, coordinate this defense response across the industry. Microsoft is evaluating Mythos using a CTI-Realm, their open source benchmark for real world detection engineering tasks, and saw substantial improvements relative to prior models. And then also, importantly enough, Microsoft is taking deliberately a multi-model approach. So they're evaluating models from multiple providers and not a single model defining their strategy. And that, we talked about that here with ChatGPT, GPT 5.5, and I'm sure there's some other model that maybe OpenAI has that maybe hasn't been announced. So, but yeah, overall, like, throughout this entire episode, it's really just about one, AI vulnerability scanning and how that's speeding things up, and then how like defenders can take advantage of that, right? So I think we're rapidly into this. I think the technology is normalizing. We're still in an area of innovation, but we're really discovering how we can use AI for security in a meaningful way. And yeah, if you haven't really like jumped on the AI train, I think now is a good time to really start diving in. And we're gonna have a guest on in a couple of weeks to really talk about some more creative ways to use AI for if you're a security person. But yeah, this is all to me extremely interesting because it's you can literally see the industry kind of evolving in front of your eyes, right?
Yeah, I mean, the closest an analog to for most of us would be the smartphone revolution in the late thousands and early 2000s, when there was an incredible pace of innovation there from 2007 to, I don't know, maybe let's say 2015, maybe for that 8-year stretch or so, when every year the new Android phones and the new iPhones were exponential leaps year over year. They got so much faster, the cameras got so much better. And then it leveled off, right? Today we say, well, it's boring. The new iPhone's hardly any different. And you go look at like a picture from taken on a smartphone in 08, 09, and it's clear, immediate smartphone picture. And then we reached a point, and it was about the mid 2010s when all of a sudden they all look pretty good. And you can't dramatically go, well, that's clearly from an iPhone 17 versus that's an iPhone 15. Like you can't tell easily unless you're an absolute guru in this stuff, because the rate of change leveled off, right? The rate of innovation slowed as a lot of the easier wins all got wrung out of the system. And we're still in that phase of rapid innovation and rapid change right now, but we are starting to see the leveling off, right? We're starting to see who are clearly the players, Is there going to be a lasting differentiated moat in terms of frontier model capability? Probably not. It seems to be about a 3-4 horse race, maybe. You've got your Googles, you've got your Open AIs, you've got your Anthropics, Microsoft AI. Do not sleep on us. We have an incredible team with Mustafa Suleiman leading the way, and we can literally have the rights to leverage Open AI's IP to train our own models. That was in the announcement earlier in the week, actually. And if you haven't followed frontier model development, it's incredibly iterative. It's you distill your previous model to make your next model in some ways, and you use your old model to train your new model. So like the first model was the hardest one to make, and then they get easier in scare quotes, right? With time, as you're able to kind of draft off your previous learnings. Well, effectively, Microsoft gets to draft off of OpenAI's all their work to create a frontier model. And we have very openly said MAI is coming with a frontier model of its own, and it's already shipped a speech generation model that's incredible, image generation models that are really, really darn good. And so there's more to come in this space too. So I would not sleep on Microsoft either. But anyhow, the point is, I think you summarized it well, Andy, that yes, AI is compressing this timeline from discovery to exploitation to patching. And there will be a period of time where we have kind of, I think, a more intensive patching process for a while. Then I think we emerge the other side and that levels off. However, now technologies like Claude security are bringing this availability not just to a select few, but to all enterprises that are willing to, buy in. And then our employer, Microsoft, is weaving AI throughout the system, not just from discovering vulnerabilities, but AI ready posture management, and then using AI to enable solutions at enterprise scale and global scale and beyond in terms of accelerating not just the patching, but the detections as well, and building those into the Defender product at the same time as the patch is built into Windows. And that's the benefit you get when you develop Defender for Endpoint and Windows side by side. You can do both. Let's develop the patch and let's develop the detections together. And so I think you're going to see more like that to come from everyone. But ultimately, I think, Andy, you and I are both, if you're in cybersecurity, you have a natural skepticism, a healthy skepticism. And it's important that everyone keeps that moving forward. But I really do take a bullish, positive view on where our industry is headed. And it's been kind of dark, man. We've had some dark conversations about like the rate of attacks keep growing, and the defensive teams are not getting more funding, they're not getting more budget. It's getting harder to protect all the different workloads we're getting to protect. We need a hero to come save the day. We need some inflection point to come even the scales. And all of a sudden that's arrived. And in some ways, there's a certain class of people who want to look at their nose down on it. This is not the silver bullet, not the savior, but this is a tool that can help us kind of even the fight. And that is something I'm really excited about, because being in cybersecurity, I really kind of got in this game in 2017. And through about 2022, the story just kept getting worse every year.
Yeah.
And now it feels like there is some hope that we can turn the tides and make this a manageable problem without burning out humanity on it. I'm excited about that. Why would I not be?
Yeah.
So I choose to take the positive viewpoint. I am not ignorant to the fact or have my head in the sand that there's going to be pain along the way. There always is. And look at, I compared this to smartphones. Let me tie back to that for a second. We are dealing with the negative outcomes from smartphones, from social media. Certainly has, I think, impacted our ability to have positive discourse and to discuss things in a healthy and civil way. It has impacted that. And you have smartphone addiction that is impacting a lot of people. Shockingly, a lot of, by the way, in my life, in my experience, the previous generations, a lot of boomers. I have several boomers in my life who have struggling with smartphone addiction today. And it's a real problem. And they just doom scrolling on their phone all day long. And we have the impacts in schools with cyberbullying and everything else. Just with every positive technology, where it is amazing that I can beam pictures of my children to their grandparents, with the snap of a finger, and they can feel like they're more connected and watch them grow up in ways my grandparents never got to see with me. That's amazing and beautiful and wonderful and bringing humanity together. There's been all these negative impacts too. this will be no different. There will be downsides to this, but I think there are tremendous upsides too, and I'm choosing to focus on those. And I think this show is a great example of all the positive things that AI can bring to security defenders' lives now and in the future.
Great wrap up there, Adam. All right. Well, thanks for watching and listening as always. That's our show for this week. Our contact information, as well as the links to the articles that we used for the show, will be in the show notes. If you have any questions or topics you want us to talk about in the future, just email us. Thanks. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to the Blue Security Podcast. Please check out the show notes, catch up on episodes you may have missed, and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Find Andy on Twitter @AJaw0 and Adam @AJ Brewer. See you at our next episode.